extra cash. We begin this morning with secret tapes. Again, allegations of racism, and the White House now in a PR war with Omarosa, the former reality show contestant turned White House aide. The president once said Omarosa always promises and delivers high drama. Well, he was not kidding. I have a great team here to break all of this down, but first, I want to lay out what we know. This morning, the White House is dealing with two different PR problems. The first surrounds the content of these new secretly recorded tapes of Omarosa talking to the president and White House officials like John Kelly. The second is the fact that these tapes were recorded at all. Now, as for the first issue, we are now hearing the conversations Omarosa hinted at in her new book, specifically Chief of Staff John Kelly firing her in the Situation Room last December, and the phone call in which the president appears to hear about it for the first time.
I think it's important to understand that if we make this a friendly departure, we can all be, you can look at your time here in the White House as a year of service to the nation. And then you can go on without any type of difficulty in the future relative to your reputation.
Can I ask you a couple of questions? Is the president aware of what's going on?
Let's not go down the road. This is a non-negotiable discussion.
I don't want to negotiate. I've never had a chance to talk to you, General Kelly. Yeah, so if this is my departure, I'd like to have at least an opportunity to understand.
We can talk another time. This has to do with some pretty serious integrity violations. So I'll let it go at that. So the staff and everyone on the staff works for me, not the president.
Omarosa, what's going on? I just saw on the news that you're thinking about leaving. What happened?
General Kelly came to me and said that you guys wanted me to leave.
No, nobody even told me about it. Nobody.
Wow.
They run a big operation, but I didn't know it. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
God damn it. I don't love you leaving at all.
Interestingly, while that tape implies the president knew nothing about her firing, Omarosa said she now believes he did know, but may have instructed John Kelly to fire her so he could, quote, keep his hands clean. We should point out that NBC has not been able to listen to the full recording of that conversation, and we have not gotten a response from the White House yet. Of course, the administration is now rightly concerned that there could be a whole lot more tapes with more secretly recorded conversations. After the initial recordings of John Kelly was played on Meet the Press, the administration responded with some very harsh words. Quote, the very idea that a staff member would sneak a recording device into the White House Situation Room shows a blatant disregard for our national security, and then to brag about it on national television further proves the lack of character and integrity of this disgruntled former White House employee. Omarosa defended herself on NBC's Meet the Press.
Because this is a White House where everybody lies. The president lies to the American people. Sarah Huckabee stands in front of the country and lies every single day. You have to have your own back, because otherwise you'll look back and you'll see 17 knives in your back.
I'm reminded of one of the president's most famous quotes, how he always brings the best people. I want to bring in NBC's Kelly O'Donnell. She's in Berkeley Heights, New Jersey. Okay, Kelly, at this point, how exactly is the administration responding to this? Because to Omarosa's point, if it was simply her word against theirs, they'd call her a liar and move on. But with these tapes, it poses a very different threat.
It does, and one of the things they've seized upon is the location of her dismissal inside the Situation Room. We've not gotten an answer as to why such a secure facility was used to discipline or to separate from an employee. That seems a bit unusual when the chief of staff has one of the largest offices in the White House complex. So they are able to now make it a national security or a security protocol issue, and one of character. One of the interesting things will be in the additional tapes that she claims to have, when do these recordings start? Having covered the Trump administration since the beginning, there were plenty of times when Omarosa Manigault Newman appeared to be blending in with the team, happy to serve, a much different sort of, at least kind of forward expression of her time in the White House. So when did she begin doing this? A lot of her fame, of course, has come from being a reality TV villain on the show Apprentice and others, and she is very, very good at using the best tools in her disposal. And this, of course, bringing recordings is one way to bring her bit of proof, as she would like to say. She now refers to herself as a whistleblower. So some of the craft that she learned from reality television in the Donald Trump orbit brought to the White House. The White House, not sure how much more there is, although one might argue that she would have brought the biggest, most explosive type tapes out first, involving the chief of staff and the president. And now she's saying, I've got more and I can protect myself. Here's more of Omarosa Manigault-Newman.
I have protections. The moment that I've decided to blow the whistle on a lot of the corruption going on in the White House, there are protections that are afforded to me. So let's be clear. The things that General Kelly is doing in this White House should concern all Americans.
So she is trying to make the argument about the president's fitness to serve, the structure of the White House, and the truthfulness of the White House. And the White House pushing back is saying an employee who would do this should not be trusted. Steph?
A reality TV show villain versus another reality TV show villain. This is where we are. Welcome to 2018. I want to bring in my panel. It is an excellent one today. My friend Jason Johnson, politics editor at TheRoot.com, and Bret Stephens is with us, op-ed columnist with the New York Times. Bret, I turn to you first. Do these tapes help Omarosa's credibility?
No, and we may as well bring out our checkbooks right now and write checks to the Trump 2020 campaign by giving her the time that she's clearly asking for. Because I think if anyone has less credibility than Donald Trump, it's actually probably Omarosa. There's so many things to say about this White House right now. There are so many credible charges that can be laid at its feet in terms of the way it's dealt with race relations and in terms of the way it's dealt with foreign policy, our allies. You go down a list. But when people who are probably watching the show, maybe not well inclined toward the Trump administration, wonder where his base of support comes from, it comes from giving as much credibility to a person who has as little credibility as Omarosa.
But no one is giving Omarosa credibility. Nobody is saying she's a good guy or she's honest. But Omarosa has known the president since 2004. She worked with him on The Apprentice. She was inside the White House as a senior official for over a year.
That is the more terrifying fact about the Trump administration, that she was in it for as long as she was.
Then let that terrifying character, whether they're telling the truth or not, tell that story. That's a person who's actually inside, and we're on the outside looking in, wondering if this is just madness or strategy.
Next to Jared Kushner and Ivanka, she probably knows him better than anybody else in the White House. So to that degree, she is credible. The fact that
she knows them. She did The Apprentice with Ivanka and Don Jr. and Eric.
She knows the family. She knows the business. She has flown on private jets with him long before this man was running for president. Omarosa, look, every time you go to court, right, sometimes you got to get a drug dealer to give information to another drug dealer. Everyone's not going to have a perfect background. But if there's somebody who can speak about how this White House operates, or even worse, and I think this is key, the fact that she was wandering in and out of the building and recording people and no one seemed to have a problem with it one way or another, it tells us how disorganized and how sloppy this place was. I find this compelling.
People had a problem with it. It's just so unorganized, they didn't know she was doing it.
Exactly. Sean Spicer was snatching people's cell phones last spring saying, we're going to stop all these leaks. Apparently, he never did that to Omarosa. So, look, and I also think, and I know this, I've had conversations with her both on and off the record, she's a smart woman. She didn't get tapes just of her getting fired. I think that's probably what she's releasing now because it helps the books. I am quite confident when she's saying I'm protected, she probably has people on the record saying things that they could get in legal trouble.
But because she's smart doesn't mean she's honest.
Or maybe we're talking about someone who is seeking a moment of maximum publicity, and we are giving her maximum airtime. There's tons of things going on in this country right now that ought to concern us, that serious people ought to be talking about. But instead, we're saying, look, Omarosa says X, Y, and Z about the president. If any of those things are not credible, it enhances the president's credibility among his defenders. And that's going to be the consequence of this discussion.
To that exact point, we're going back and forth whether or not Omarosa believes the president ever used the N-word. At one point, she said no. Now she's saying possibly. I would argue, does it actually matter? If you look at the president's history in terms of race relations, despite what Republicans may say, it's very bad. So are we wasting time or having the wrong debate on whether or not the president ever used that word?
I've never cared about whether or not the president uses the N-word, and I have said multiple times, I'm not even concerned if somebody's racist. I'm concerned about their policies. It's not against the law to be racist. There are lots of racist people in this country. I think it's not an issue of giving her too much publicity. It's an issue of what does it represent about this administration that we have people like that working there. That is a valuable discussion. That is a discussion we can never talk too much about because it reveals how dangerous it is to be run by a bunch of incompetent TV show
Jason,
stars.
I could not agree with you more. The scandal of the Trump administration is that it brought the values and, in fact, the personnel of the celebrity apprentice into the White House apparatus. The scandal is that Omarosa didn't see anything the matter, apparently, with putting on her cell phone in the Situation Room. That's far more damning about what the Trump administration was in its first year, and I think continues to be today, than whatever salacious allegations Omarosa makes now. But I will say this. If it turns out she doesn't have a tape with Trump using the N-word, the administration will use that mercilessly to say all of my critics are making these outrageous allegations against me, and there's nothing to them, and they're all fraudulent, and you're just a bunch of you know, quote, libtards who make these crazy allegations that have no basis in fact, and this is how he wins re-election 2 years down the road.
Jason, where Bret makes an excellent point, you could have Omarosa up there today saying he's unhinged, he's unfit, and unless she has actual credible evidence where he has changed somehow in the last 18 months than when she took the job, Bret is exactly right. She's lumped into this other look at the liberal universe who now embrace their foe because it fit their narrative.
Well, I think the problem with that is you're preaching to the choir, right? Trump's people, the idea that, oh my gosh, this is going to strengthen his base, they already love him. It doesn't matter. Omarosa could come out with a proof of life that Donald Trump shot somebody, called them the N-word, and danced down the street and put it on YouTube, and they would say it was fake news. I mean, it's not like, this is not about changing his constituency. This is about the larger discussion in this country about how organized or disorganized our government is. I don't think in 6 months that this is going to matter that much. But if you're talking about your independent voters, if you're talking about people who are like, look, I don't care about this stuff, I just want an organized government, that's where this comes into play, because people, I don't want to hear about this every day. And clearly he doesn't know how to hire people, he doesn't know how to fire people, he doesn't know how to behave responsibly, and that's what this country needs to know. We can't talk about that enough.
Look, what I'm saying is, if you're going to say that the sky is falling, the sky had better fall, or otherwise people are not going to take you credibly. If you say the wolf is coming and the coyote only shows up, people will say it's once again an exaggeration. I'll never forget.
The coyote dangerous than a wolf?
The coyote is very dangerous.
Yeah,
okay?
I think the coyote is very dangerous.
I'll never forget when Hillary Clinton said, you know, why am I not ahead 50 points? Part of the reason is that they had
Hamptons in August?
Right. Well, I mean, exactly. Or Vineyard or wherever, the Vineyard. But, you know, part of the problem was Trump's opponents kept saying, this guy's going to be the worst thing that ever happened. And if he didn't quite live up to that standard of being the absolute worst, if he managed to string a coherent English sentence together, some part of the country says, once again, this is a crazy overreaction by people suffering from Trump derangement
Bret is
syndrome.
right. Not just some part of the country. Leading business leaders continue to say, ignore his tweets, look at the policy, forgetting the fact that the policy is damning to a huge portion of the country, actually a huge portion of his base.
And that's ultimately what ends up happening. Like I said, I don't think in 6 months is going to be the issue.
But it doesn't end up happening because he wins this narrative.
But it doesn't matter if you're winning a narrative if people can't keep their jobs or they feel unsafe, or if Harley Davidson has to move, or if steel workers in western Pennsylvania feel like their jobs aren't going to be secure. That ultimately is going to be the measure of this presidency, regardless of what Omarosa says. And the other thing is this, whether you're talking about the N-word or the mysterious tape that Michael Steele is talking about or anything else, what it also speaks to, I've said this before, we have an excellent economy right now on some levels, right? And this guy is still hovering in the low 40s. Why is that happening? Because of things like Omarosa, because of things like Sean Spicer, because people are feeling like, you know, I hired this guy to not be in this kind of drama.
Sean Spicer do not change anyone's votes.
I do. I think they change people's votes who voted for a guy who they thought was not going to get us into this kind of nonsense. They wanted a president who was just going to do business.
What happens is it merely convinces the president's supporters that the opponents of the presidents will use any hammer against him, including someone like Omarosa, who liberals were condemning in the strongest possible terms just a few months ago, suddenly becomes a credible Yet
And we
another
cannot
credible
forget,
tribune about the awfulness of the president.
Omarosa is complicit in that she now says he's unhinged, he's unfit. She didn't quit. Okay? After Charlottesville, this was the one-year anniversary of Charlottesville.
Yeah.
What did she say after? Nothing. Almost no one in the entire administration said anything. She never quit. She never spoke out. She was fired. So to Bret's point, can she really be used as a credible person? Can President Trump say, look, you will do anything to make your story work?
He can make that argument, and any Democrat who uses Omarosa to attack Donald Trump is an idiot. I think she's just operating in her own space, which is part of the overall swamp, which is damaging to this administration. And this is a key thing. When you talk about the N-word, and you're like, well, if she can't produce it, it doesn't matter, because like I said, everyone believes he uses it. So it doesn't matter if she can prove that. It doesn't matter if she can demonstrate that he said something racist. Snatching babies from kids is 10 times worse than saying the N-word for a lot of different people in this country. So that's where I think this plays in. She becomes part of the overall dime, the overall drumbeat that there's a mess in Washington, and that's not what people voted for.
We talked a lot about how much free airtime Donald Trump got, which boosted his credibility moving into 2016. We're giving free airtime to a witness who doesn't deserve it. There's so many things that you and I ought to be talking about at this table. I can't believe we're talking
Flint
about
still
Omarosa.
doesn't have clean water, but I was tweeting that this morning.
But there you go. There you go.
Flint doesn't have clean water. It costs $55 million for new pipes there, and $8 billion, I think, is what the president is looking for the Space Force. I'm going to make one last point. 83% of Republicans approve of President Trump's handling of racial issues, compared to 10% of Democrats. That's a CBS poll. So we can debate all day long on whether or not the president used the N-word. 83% of Republicans think he is A-OK in terms of race relations. All right, we're going to leave it there. And guess what? I know what Bret is going to be doing at 11 o'clock. He's going to be watching my partner, Ali Velshi, and I interview Omarosa.